So in this video, I just want to talk about the way I might go about making drums sound bigger. There's a million ways people do it. It's not a mixing tutorial. I don't want to sit here and claim to be a mixer. I find a lot of mixers, you ask them what to do and it's like, fix your room and all that stuff. But I am definitely speaking more to the producer that can't just go and fix their room, can't go and pay a mixing engineer, and is self-producing a lot of their tracks. Just some ways to combine a bit of mixing and a bit of mixing ideology and how I approach it, along with just general tips that I find useful when I need to get more out of my drums, whether that's I need them to feel thicker, I need to create space for certain parts, whatever, you know, comes to light while doing it. It might be adding a few elements. It's not like that I'm even locking into these things as stems. This is a simple drum beat that I've got to set a tone. At the moment, I've got no effects on it. I've got nothing that's already enhancing it other than the sample selection. But I've tried to create something that's not just one genre style. You know, this could be a pop track. It's a little bit quicker. It could be a dance track, could be a hip hop track. Basically, I don't feel like the drums are like locked into a genre. It's kind of definitely mixing things from different kinds of packs to try and create something just a little bit hybrid, because I thought that would be better for just demonstrating when you might need to sort of think outside the box with stuff. The loop already sounds decent, but I just want to push it further and show how I would take something like this and just make it slam and hit harder, and we can do a little bit before and after. So let's just jump into it. So this is it as it sounds already. So like you can see, it's just some upbeat drums. They sound pretty good anyway, but I'm just going to now take you through a few steps that I would do, and I'll try and talk them through as we sort of do it. So to me, there's just, first thing I would always naturally do is take a look at the kick drum. I feel like there's something going on in the frequencies and sort of like the lower mids that I want to just pull out. Generally, just a little bit of something there, just to make a little bit of space for the rest of the track. In this, with it just being drums, it's not as obvious, but this is something I do commonly. You just find that area that's just a little bit. The snare sound we've got is quite like filtered already through the sound selection, but that's going to be good because we might want to give that some more body. So what I would do for that, you can use any sort of saturator to do this, but I think that Ableton's raw saturation is amazing for just getting those frequencies out. So what I would do, it's going to sound extreme at first, but then I'm going to wet dry it. And with it being the mid-range, I want to get it just to the point where you're getting that like break up of the sound. Like there. And then I also might do a little bit to the top. Kind of like just EQing it, but you're bringing it out through saturation rather than... There I'm just creating, so I'm setting the high frequency to just be a bit higher so that we get less breakthrough on that. I just like the power that sometimes a bit crushed saturation style sound. Just kind of just want it just doing enough. Then I like to compress the signal and then wet dry it. So even just getting that little bit extra sonic through. Could even go less. I've gone a bit generous with 20%. It's like, it doesn't change the fundamental quality of the sound, but it adds more air to it without just boosting an EQ. Gives it some character. Without. With. Just gives it a little bit of air. I think it's enhancing it a lot. Here we've got a clap, which is already quite airy, but what I think gives a clap a bit of distance. This is already a clap with some almost like room to it. It's not a frequency thing. so much. There's maybe, I don't like to EQ for the sake of it. I'll take a little look. There's a little bump there. But then the question is that fundamental to the power of the sound? Maybe. I would say yes. If anything, maybe it can boost a little bit. Give it a bit more presence. Because there are no rules when it comes to this stuff. That's it without. This is it with. It just gets that mid-range more lively, and a lot of energy is in the mid-range. I also like to put on a short, sort of like fast delay sound. I find that the Echo Boy Junior is really good for doing this, just because it's simplified. I like to go ping pong, I like to go off the grid, I like a short feedback tail, and then I'll start with the mix high so I can hear it properly. I also like the space setting. And I kind of you don't want to hear it echoing like this. Although that can be cool for certain things, but for this, I'm just more wanting it to be a textural thing. And then once I bring this down, that's it without. Just a little bit. And then without. With. You just get a little bit of vibes out of it. And that's really a go-to way that I've worked with claps. Sometimes with snares. I use that plugin a lot when I need to do that kind of effect. So first thing I do with a hi-hat is kind of basic, but I do like to roll off just the bottom end. Even though there's nothing in it on this one, but I just like to be safe. I'm not one of these people that say you should roll everything off the bottom. I used to be, but I think sometimes you can lose a lot of thickness and character when you're doing that throughout a mix to everything, just because, like, in your brain it makes sense. It's like, oh, you don't want anything muddying up down there. But sometimes it's not mud, sometimes it's character. Like, I think a lot of the reason that we like the sound of tape and that we like the sound of vinyl is because it has a low-end hum often, and it just adds to a feeling sometimes. So I think don't be so quick to just roll the bottom end off of everything. That said, sometimes, and often it is appropriate, so, you know. So really the hi-hats get sort of like the least love because they're just ticking away, especially this kind of hi-hat. Different hi-hats, different, but this is a really common type of hi-hat that is just everywhere, which is why I went for this kind of 808 hi-hat. I have like a short room reverb just on my preset, just something, kind of anything will work, just something short, and you can send it to that. If I send it all the way, you hear it just adds almost like a little bit of glassiness to it, but I like to just get it just where you can only just hear it. Like about there. And we've got this weird like percussion section. This is potentially where you can get a little bit creative and sort of add maybe even like a flanger or a phaser or something. Just get a little bit more movement in it. Just doing it slowly. Gives it more energy again, keeps it a little bit more, gives it a little bit more movement. That's it without. That's it with. Just feels more alive to me. This is like a character sound. That's how I would define that. So this is somewhere that I would maybe push it a little bit with saturation or a bit of distortion. For this one, I'm going to use the Black Box plugin, the Plugin Alliance version, and just turn the saturation on. Just turn it up, honestly. Just get some of that crunch. A bit of that air. Even drive the input a little bit, really. Get it sounding like mushy. And then it boils back down to the mix. This is it without. A little bit flat, but maybe you want the clean thing, but for this, a bit too flat. And just adding that crunch, that rumble, I just think it makes it more intentional and a little bit more aggressive. Again, this could maybe have a little bit delay. It's one of those, it's not always going to work, but it feels like because of the space between it, a little bit of just carryover will be nice. A dotted eighth maybe. So yeah, that just gives it a little bit more atmosphere, and it works better to me than a reverb would. Just a little bit of atmosphere. I'd maybe even carry it on a bit longer, take out more of the lows so it's less intrusive. Yeah, it's just a vibe. And we've got this break on, which is already a chopped break, which has got a load of processing in the original break. But something I always find can bring a lot out of breaks is the erosion plugin, which for a long time I kind of slept on. But the way that, especially the updated plugin, the way it can just bring out some fizzle and some air, but by adding something interesting to the signal rather than, again, just using EQ. You can either do the sine erosion. I don't really know the technical ins and outs of what it is, but one is noise based, one is like based around the sine wave. It's kind of bit crushy when you use it, the sine one, but it's almost got more tone to it. And then you've got the noise, which is far more like static sounding, I guess. Then you can widen it. I tend to prefer the noise for most stuff. This is actually quite nice. I like to just find a pocket. Obviously, when you've got a song, you would be more informed on where the gaps are in the song when it comes to mixing. So just bear that in mind with anything I'm doing. You would want to obviously not just be listening to only the drums. It's got to work with the track, but there is no track, so we're just kind of fleshing it out to be a big drum sound right now. I'm going to listen to it with the drums before I make a decision. See, I think somewhere a bit lower, what that's saying around 400 hertz area. It's just thickening it a little bit, but with like noise. Is it without? It's nice and clean, but if you wanted something that's just going to be a bit edgier, I tend to like stuff to just have a bit of that to it. So it is personal taste always, but these are just some techniques that you might not have used before. So then back to the kick drum. Like the kick drum, I don't find often that the individual sounds need much compression and things like that because we're using samples. So it can sometimes be helpful though, but often I'm just completely ignoring compression when it comes to sample-based drums. But what I do like to do, and there'll be multiple stages of this, is clip the drums, but I'm going to start with the kick drum. Usually I do the rest of the drum group, but for this I'm going to actually use orange clip, which is my favorite clipper. I've tried a bunch of clippers, standard clips, great, and these days there's just loads of clippers about, and all you're doing is, rather than limiting, you're just chopping the signal off flat when it goes above the threshold. But you can do it softer or harder and you get slightly different results. Well, drastically different results depending on how fine-tuned your ear is, but it's subtle until you start really driving it, which, you know, you don't want to do for the most part, but there's always creative room to do what you want. For me, I just want it to increase something about the attack. The attack on this kick drum is already quite clicky and poppy, which I tend to like, but it's a little bit digital sounding, whereas this, as much as it is digital clipping, it just starts to crunch it. It just rounds it off. I can't explain it really. It's subtle, like I say, but it's a good way to get just some more power out of your kick drum, or any of your drums, but we're just doing it on the kick drum right. I like to bring the ceiling down first because I know I'm going to bring it all up later on. So maybe to like -5, so we've got some headroom. And then I just push above. If I push it really hard, that's where you feel it starts to saturate sort of like in the lows, somewhere in the low half of the frequency spectrum. It's just a certain artifact that comes with chopping off the audio. For this, I would probably go like harder with the clipping, but not all the way. I would say I'm overdoing it right now though. About there. Yeah, it just adds some noise, basically. This is it without. This is it with. Just helps it cover more of the lower end frequencies in a way that is, you know, going to cut through rather than just sit on a sub. Also, don't be afraid to experiment with the tuning of your kick drum. And again, all of your drums, sometimes when you've got a track there and you're struggling to make that kick sit, you might just need to nudge it up a couple of semitones or down a few semitones. I think our instinct would say to go down, but it's surprising how often up is the fix. On this one, it's down. And then the kick always wants to just be the loudest thing, in my opinion. So our snare is just lacking a bit of punch. So I would first take a look at trying to get some more punch out of the snare, but sometimes that just will boil down to needing to literally layer a snare. It's all quite top heavy. We're missing a lot from the lower frequencies on this snare. So what I would do is probably use another raw and just have a different focus on it, because I like how we can pick the frequencies that we're working on. And then just focus really heavily on the low mids. So bring the lows down a bit. So we're focusing a lot more on this region. And just drive into it a lot more. So it's doing a little bit too much at the minute, but once I dial that back a bit on the dry wet, I think that it'll be doing what I was hoping to do. Because without, like, it's just kind of a little bit thin. It's like when there's no kick, you're just not getting a slap. You're getting a lot of snap at the top end, but you're not getting that thump that often we want. But then when I add it in, but obviously that's way too much, but you see what I'm doing. If I gradually bring it in, there'll be a place where it like starts to just enhance and give it that thicker snare feel. See there, so if I take it off, but with, gives it a lot more body. So that, for the most part, unless you wanted to particularly have like a reverby sound on your snare, which, you know, for the argument's sake, we will do. I have a reverb loaded at all times, but I'm going to swap that out for one of my favorite reverbs to work with, especially when it comes to things like longer snare reverbs. And that is the Soundtoys Superplate. It's got a bunch of options on. I honestly have never taken the time to look into what's emulating what and what these mean. I just purely go off my ear. Like, I just kind of find it a bit boring to go manual digging, so I don't get enough from it. So what I'll start by doing is sending it all the way there so we can really hear what the reverb's doing. I'll just look at a few different characteristics. That one's darker. That one's like, I don't know, roomier in the top end. That one's a little bit more dispersed. That one's a bit metallic and subdued. And that one's like deep and dark. So we've got an EQ within it, so we can filter out all that bottom end if we wanted to, but we're still trying to maybe like add a little bit of thickness. So I think the worrying place would be around sort of like between 1 and 3K that we just don't get a build up. You can already see when I blast it, you start getting crackly sound. So if I just bring that down just to be safe, and just calm that down a little bit, then rather than it be a dry snare, we can just kind of get a happy place for that to just I'm happy with them individually. Now the main event really is the group bus processing. First thing I'll put on, I mean, what I like to do, I don't always do it because it's not always appropriate, but a virtual tape machine of sorts is always good. It just kind of adds a character to it. This is it without. This is it with. Without. With. It's doing a lot to the bottom end. You can mess with the different settings and they're all different tape speeds and tape types and machine types, and the bias, high, normal and low. It's all on every one of these really. They've kind of all got the same stuff. Some have got like hiss levels and stuff where you can go in depth. I don't have a particular favorite. I feel like this one, this Slate Digital one is quite warm, which is why I picked it here. But then there's some good UAD ones that have got kind of, I think you can push them a bit more, get more detail out of them almost. I don't know. But what I don't want to do is drive it as hard as it is right now. So I'm going to bring it back until this meter's kind of just tickling the red is the aim for me. Without. With. Just adds a little bit of thickness. We're definitely at a point now where it's little and often with the steps. Like the next thing I'll put on is this Slate VBC rack, virtual bus compressor. That's what I think it is, but it's basically 3 different bus compressors all in one plugin. You can open them individually as well, but I just tend to like to open them all at once because why not? And I do a little bit of something with each one of them. The first one I'll have a slow attack, fast release, very minimal on the ratio. I'll do literally the minimal I can do, and then just kind of hit it as light as I can. And then on the other one, I'll do again the same, but I'll go quicker and I'll make this be a bit more about controlling the attack. If I squash it, obviously it's doing too much, but again, sometimes you want to hit it a bit harder. But I like, you know, maybe -2 dB. And then this last one, I do a bit of parallel, so I'll really push it, so it's really squashing it. Slower attack, faster release. But then I'll dial right back on the mix and just get a little bit of it in the signal. Just get a little bit more control, but maybe I could go easier on the mix there. Without. With. See, now some of you might think that it's lost something when I've added that, but I'm thinking a few steps ahead because I know I'm going to bring some stuff back. So next, I would maybe look at a little bit of EQ. Don't always go mad with EQ when it comes to this stuff, but for the sake of the video, I'll put a little bit on because there's some rumbliness maybe down at the bottom. Like if you actually had a track, this sort of area could be causing you problems, so. Pull a little bit of this area down, a little bit of the kick drum up. If there was a bass in there, I often will roll a little bit off there and make it a little bit steeper, to maybe like 30-ish. But I don't always do this, but it's just makes a little bit of extra space. Maybe boost a bit, give it a little bit of air at the top. I'm not scared to push this a little bit. Without. with. Just a little bit more sparkly. Then I'll go for orange clip again. Orange clip comes back out, does something to the overall. Pull it down to maybe like -3. See how I'm like slowly creeping up with my ceiling. Every time I'm adding a dynamic controlling device. This just needs to like hit it just a few dB. That's clipping 3.6 dB off. Maybe could go even less. 2.6, 3.8. You know, people could argue that that's too much if they're like proper audiophile type people, but like I say, this is not a mixing masterclass. This is how to get the most out of your drums if you want your drums to be just hitting hard. And sounding sort of mixed and blended together well. So the last thing I would put on is sort of a loudness booster. In this situation, we kind of, you know, want to get it loud. Normally, you could maybe stay there, but for this, I just wanted to demonstrate this next plugin that, again, is a staple in my catalog of plugins that I've got. I just feel like it does a lot. It's got a certain curve to it when you run it through the sort of like multi-band processing that's built into it. It's definitely a plugin that you don't have to overthink. It kind of just does what it does, and if you like the sound of it, great, use it. And that plugin is the God Particle, which I'm sure many of you have seen about. And it always starts really fucking loud. I'd maybe even pull back on the input. You just want these meters here hitting between the green space. So it's triggering that. You've got these controls, but you know, they're only letting you go up 6 dB or down 6 dB. It's really meant for mastering. And this you can go all the way to 200. 0. 200. I mean, it sounds quite good at 200, but I never do. I usually just leave it at 100. That's usually where I'm at. And then it's got a limiter on the end, which, you know, drive as hard as you want. It'll tell you how much is being deducted up there. And as soon as we're not mastering, we can bring down the output, because it's not about trying to get loudness, it's about trying to get fullness and sonic expansion from the plugin and everything that we're adding. So I've just pulled that down a bit. So now if I just group all of these together, you'll see how much those little steps on the mix bus have done. Not the mix bus, the drum bus, but you know what I mean. This is it with. This is it without. It's just a lot flatter, whereas with, it just brings it to life a lot more. There's a little bit of volume difference still. I could dial that in, but don't let any volume difference steer you away from the fact that it does sonically sound different also. You know, you might like it like that. You might want to have it quite open and sort of, I guess, more dynamic, but for a lot of pop and electronic music, it's always been about getting it to hit hard for me. And I think most of those elements would cut through a mix. And then that's about where I'd leave it, generally speaking. You're always going to need different things for different tracks, but generally speaking, that's kind of like where I like to get things up to. I think it's sounding nice and full. We'll listen one more time. So yeah, hopefully you got something from this video. I like to keep these things quite casual. I just think sometimes it's good to see someone else's process when doing something that, you know, a lot of people can do this. A lot of people can bring energy out of the drums, and everyone's got their own little tips and tricks, and mine are ever evolving. Like if I did the same video a year later, there would be different plugins. Some plugins would be swapped out. Some decisions might have changed because I might have got really into a project over this next year where my own taste develops. So these things are ever changing. This is more just to give you some thoughts and some ideas and be like, I've never used erosion, or I've thought about that plugin, but actually getting to see it in context with somewhere that I might use it, it might, you know, encourage you to go and then actually invest in that plugin or try it out or do the trial or something. So it's really just a video to get you excited about going in and doing that to some tracks that you might do, give you some new inspiration on ways to approach this. But I've got nothing more to say on the matter for now. So if you've enjoyed the video, it's always helpful if you like and subscribe. I hate to have to say that, but you know, it's the game. I've got every intention on putting more videos out. Some will be like this. I've kind of got a load of different inspiration. I like to make different kinds of videos, and you know, I'm kind of exploring all sorts at the minute when it comes to videos, but I didn't want to leave behind the music production stuff because I think I'm fortunate enough to have done this for a long time. I get to do it for a living. Like, I've definitely got some good, practical, fast workflows that are massively beneficial for me when I'm doing my work. So I want to make sure I share that stuff as well. It's interesting for me to go over it, you know. So yeah, anyway, blabbing on. Like and subscribe. There's going to be more videos. Thank you very much. See you next time.